I never knew when we started this journey whether we could do this, whether we could achieve financial independence through real estate. We had 40 grand cash between us. We bought a fixer-upper. Essentially, it was a knockdown. We did a cosmetic renovation. We made 250 grand on that in about 2 years, right? Bought in 2001, sold in 2003. We paid lender's mortgage insurance on every one of them.
You started your career in 94 as a music teacher. So again, we're talking about modest incomes.
That's right.
And then you retired from being a principal at the age of 52.
We had a lot of family try to say, oh, you're taking on too much debt. You're going to ruin yourself. It's too much, too soon, too fast. If we can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. We're coming to you from Woonona HQ, a matter of time before our studio is locked and loaded. But in the meantime, here in the foyer, I'm joined by Barney Ellevsen as well. Hey Barney, how you doing?
I'm really well, Aaron. Thanks so much for having me
Mate,
on
I'm
today.
excited. Sorry to cut you off there, mate. I'm already ready to get straight into it. Barney, I'm excited to get into this because one of the big questions that I'll get from investors that even crosses my mind as well, as we're going on the journey, I'm like, find me someone that has successfully crossed over and is now retiring on their passive income from their investment property portfolio, which you and your wife, Ruth, have done.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through your story. Warts and all, we're going to unpack the journey. So if you're listening and you're going, tell me that this dream is real, show me that this works, we have living proof here today that playing the long game, investing in quality assets, for example, staying the course will pay dividends to successfully come out of your career and move into being retired through property.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks, Aaron.
So to set some context, details for yourself, you started your career in 94 as a music teacher. So again, we're talking about modest incomes.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
As teachers, Ruth works for the Department of Education, salaries, and then you retired from being a principal at the age of 52.
That's right.
So effectively, you've given up work.
That's right.
In your 50s, early 50s.
Yeah.
And you're also self-employed at some point as well. And we talked about the self-employed journey, which we'll cover off later. And so through building out a portfolio, you've retired, and now you've gone to start your BA business, selling property buyers, which we'll unpack. But there's a lot to get through there. If you look back on your journey, probably what's the one big thing that you say that was the turning point that really got you on this trajectory to build a property portfolio?
It's a really good question, Aaron. But and just picking up on your introduction there, and I think last time we spoke when you invited me over to meet the team and we had a bit of a chat. I never knew when we started this journey whether we could do this, whether we could achieve financial independence through real estate. We knew it was possible because we knew people had done it. Yeah. And I guess it's just about having faith in yourself and having faith in the numbers and the history, what real estate has done throughout time, and just believing in, like you say, staying the course. So it is absolutely achievable. And I know it's cliched. If we can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. But people never hear that, Barney, in the sense that I'm a big believer you can't be what you can't see. So if someone's watching this and they're going, I can see someone that's done it, it lays some breadcrumbs to follow, right?
Sure. And to answer your question, what were the turning points, I suppose, or the critical moments that helped us bring that about? I guess at each stage, those moments come along. I guess for us, see, when Ruth and I, we both sort of, Ruth and I, it's our second marriage for both of us. We'd both done a little bit of stuff in real estate prior to us meeting and starting the journey together. But we started together in 2021. No, sorry, 2001. I beg your pardon.
That's cool. Let's give 20 years in the journey.
Yeah, 2001. And we had 40 grand cash between us, right? And so I guess for us, getting our first property, right, that was going to start our journey, and we bought a fixer-upper. Essentially, it was a knockdown. We did a cosmetic renovation. The family was growing and the mortgage wasn't coming down, so we sold it, right? We needed more space before we were able to knock down and rebuild. But we made 250 grand on that in about 2 years, right?
That's
so
insane.
Bought in 2001, sold in 2003, okay? Bought for 440, so we had just less than 10% deposit. So we probably the first 5 properties we bought, we paid lender's mortgage insurance on every one of them. Yeah. Because we just wanted to build that asset base. But so that, at age 30 sort of felt like we were starting again, I suppose. And that moment when we sold that property, sort of 2 years after we'd bought it for 690,000, we thought, okay, we've made a bit of a dent. We can do something with this, and so that was one of those turning points, I guess.
Nice,
And I guess those turning points relate to being able to get over those barriers of the two big constraints, which are, capital or equity and cash flow.
Yeah.
I suppose the two big constraints when you're building a portfolio is the equity to buy more property and the serviceability for the bank to allow you to keep buying more property. So being able to do some chunk deals, which gave us good pieces of equity, and then getting some really good, what we call cash cows, like high cash flow properties to help us with the serviceability, and seeing those pieces of the puzzle fall into place as our journey unfolded. I guess they were the critical things for us that allowed us to keep going and to keep growing.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah, I guess what I hear there is there's early wins.
Yeah.
Right. So you take hey, we've done some work on the property. Now, today's market, some people might hold that, get it revalued, pull some equity out of that. You choose to sell, take your cash, capital gains free, go into your next couple of projects 100%. As well. All right, cool. Thanks very much. I want to start, if we go back to the journey, and there's something, and I think one of the big conversations that I want to put on the table, which I don't think happens enough, is investing as a couple. Yeah. So the reason why I say this fair and squarely is because I see so much YouTube content which is driven by males in property. And here I am, another male in property, for example. But I know firsthand a lot of our investment decisions, the financial management in our household and our business is run by Bernadette. And generally females need some level of security, stability, but also some type of proof to then invest in property as well. So there's this, I guess, a little bit of fear's not the right word, but checks and balances. I think they're more astute as an investor, whereas I think males can be a little bit more haphazard. And I don't want to be, please, it's not just to be sexist. I think it's just enough experience that I've had in this space to go, this is a conversation I have. So how do you and Ruth get alignment to be on the same page to go, mate, this property thing's for us? Yeah. And has it always been smooth sailing?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
And it's a really good question, Aaron. And it's something that I think needs to be spoken about a bit more. And I think part of it is, and this kind of goes back to your question earlier about key turning points. A lot of it is education, like educating yourself, right? And growing as a couple in that knowledge, right? Because if one of you is charging ahead and has all this knowledge and has some strategies in mind and can has that vision and can see we can get from here to here over 10 years, right? But their partner hasn't been a part of that learning or that education or that process. And it's not just, there's two things you need to educate yourself on. One is like the nuts and bolts of real estate. How do I build a portfolio? How do I manage a portfolio? How do I manage debt? How do I manage risk? How do I mitigate risk? All those sorts of things are skills you need to learn, right? But you also need to learn the mindset that goes with building a portfolio. How do I overcome the fear? You mentioned the word fear, and I think it is a part of it. Like we're hardwired as humans to be risk averse, I think.
Absolutely.
And it's knowing yourself well enough to know where is it just the normal jitters that anyone would have when they're making $1 million purchase or a $500,000 purchase. It's a big decision. It's a high stakes decision, and you are always going to have a little bit of trepidation. That's very normal. But understanding the difference between that and a wrong move and not allowing the jitters to scare you out of a right move. Okay, so that journey of education, you need to do that as a couple. You know, and if you're not doing that as a couple, I think you're possibly setting yourself up for problems, you know, and maybe a bit of a rub and a bit of a misalignment as you journey that. And it's interesting you mention a little bit of a male prominence there in terms of that whole space, okay? And I've seen it as well, right? And I will talk to my clients sometimes, and I might have, look, it can go both ways. It can go both ways, but more often, something I hear a lot will be, there'll be initial conversation. Someone will ring up, maybe the husband or the fellow will ring up. We'll have a conversation. He says, look, sounds great, but sorry, Barney, I need to check with my wife.
Yeah.
And I say, mate, don't apologise for checking with your wife. So I would be surprised if you didn't.
Yeah.
If your wife is going, she's your life partner, and if she's going to be your partner in this, then you guys need to have a conversation about this. And I'd be disappointed if you didn't, to be honest, So, and I think we need to get past that masculinity. Oh, sorry, I need to check with my wife. No, you're not sorry you need to check with your wife. You're lucky to have her in your corner and on your team. You couldn't do this without her.
Well said.
You know what I mean? You consult with her, and two heads are better than one, And I think that's really important. I could not have done what we have done without Ruth. There is no way. There is no way. My brother sometimes said to me, how did you do what you do? I go, I had Ruth in my corner. I could not have done this on my own. Forget it. Forget it.
Isn't it funny how you, and it's not to pick at your brother, but isn't it funny when someone says, how did you do it? And you're probably on the journey at that point, telling people, and they thought you were probably mad at that time. And I say this all the time. People will ask us in, I don't know, call it 10, 15 years as well.
It's true.
How did you do it? I was like, geez, it was hard.
Yeah.
We had to build a team. We had to get ourselves in the right headspace. We had to get organized financially.
Yeah.
We had to have hard conversations.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we had to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And I think that's the question that I say for a lot of people. They'll come back and go, how did you do it? And it's like, I'm literally telling you as we go along, here's how we're doing it.
I didn't listen to you telling me to not do it. Because we had a lot of family try to say, oh, you're taking on too much debt. You're going to ruin yourself. it's all going to come tumbling down. This is too much, too soon, too fast. Like, they were risk-averse, debt-averse. And it was out of love and care.
This is exactly it.
Out of love and care, but they hadn't read the books that I'd read. They hadn't studied the reports that I'd studied.
Friends. This is why I built out our Property Accelerator community, which is they want to be around like-minded people that are championing those decisions as opposed to condemning those decisions to going, exactly that. You're taking on too much debt. That's a risky area to invest in. That's a bad decision. The market's going to tank. And it's coming from family or friends that haven't done it, that aren't doing it, but somehow seem to have an opinion about it. And I've got a very clear saying to people, I'm like, no pay, no say. So you're not paying my mortgage, you don't kind of get to say my strategy. Or if I'm not paying you as a professional,
I like that.
You don't get to say, you don't get to sit at the table. And it's not to be disrespectful.
No, not at all.
It's just more a courteous thing that you've got to shut out the noise.
You do.
To be able to move forward with clarity and confidence.
You do. And, I think loved ones and people who want the best for you, who don't share your vision, can be a constraint for you. And so after a while, I just stopped telling them when we bought another property. That's
exactly what happens.
Because it would worry them. And it would worry me because I would start to get the jitters and go, well, what if they're right? So I just stopped talking about it. And then we sort of got to that point where we'd passed the tipping point where they could see, well, it hasn't all come tumbling down, and wow, they're actually getting somewhere with this, and they actually seem to know what they're doing. And that's a very satisfying. And look, they're my biggest supports now. Yeah, they can see, and it was never out of any ill will, or it wasn't a jealousy thing. It was nothing like that. It was just a genuine concern. Yeah, protective. And not 100%. That's what it was. Yeah. But they're really happy for us, and they're proud of us, and they're glad that it's happened for us, and we've been able to help some of them as well, on their journey too, in terms of that sort of thing. So awesome. But in terms of relationships and couples, you have to share that vision, and if you're not quite aligned, you need to grow together as a couple and find. It's not a matter of, yours and mine. You need to find ours, and that might mean changing things up a bit.
Thanks,
and letting go of some things and allowing space for some new things to come in that work for you as a couple. Is what we've found.
Thanks, man. One of the analogies that I use with couples is there's only one person that goes out for the toss. Obviously, I'm a big cricket fan. So, Steve Smith or Pat Cummins will only go out for the toss, right?
Yep.
Not the whole squad of 11.
Yep, sure.
Or in a couple, 2 don't go out for a coin toss.
Sure.
So out in your relationship, so the analogy I'm trying to get to is who takes the lead here? And has that changed over time, or does someone consistently drive this in your house?
Yeah, it depends. We've kind of found our roles within it, and it sounds like Ruth and I are fairly similar to yourself and Bernadette, where Ruth looks after all the financial side of the business, the portfolio, the household, right? So she is incredible, right? She can tell me what our interest rates are, I can't tell you that, right? She's just got it all there, and she knows what the rates are for this property, what the water bills are. She's got all of that, right? And I know broad brushstrokes, right? I know the cash positive, and I know the outgoing, but I can't break it down in that detail. So Ruth's got all of that, and I'm the hustler in terms of searching out the next deal, planning the next move, sourcing that deal, negotiating, securing that deal, right? But Ruth's kind of the gatekeeper on what deal gets up and what deal doesn't.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? So I'll come to Ruth, I found this great property. And she'll be like, right.
Convince me.
Exactly, And sometimes she'll just be like, nah, forget it, not now, wrong time. And I'll be like, oh.
In our books, every time's a good time.
Every time's a good, what's this wrong time of which you speak?
I think you and I probably very similar. Where I have very bad tempo and timing energy. So to me, I want it done yesterday.
Yeah, I'm the same. And I find what Ruth does is she keeps me grounded, and she asks really good questions, and she forces me to reflect on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful to her for that. So in terms of that, Ruth is a real balancing and leveling force there for us. But then sometimes as well, Ruth will be a little bit overly cautious, right? And she has a fear of, she doesn't have a fear of death. It'd be interesting she'd love to have a chat to you as well at some point. You could hear her perspective. I think that'd be interesting for her. So I don't want to just speak for her, but I think she would probably agree. She is a little bit more risk averse. Okay, let's put it that way. Strike fear. Let's just say it because she's got the heart of a lion, right? Let's say risk averse, a little more risk averse than I am. Okay, and so what I've learned over the years is I'll find a deal, and I'll know this is a deal every day of the week. It suits our strategy. It suits our goals and our investment style, right? And I know it's going to be a winner. There's going to be positive cash flow. There's going to be equity uplift, right? And I'll have it all planned out in my head. And because I've been spending maybe 2 or 3 weeks looking at this property, talking to the agents, researching the area, and I might not have kept her up to speed with that journey. And then I'll suddenly drop this in her lap when maybe she's cooking tea or whatever. Yeah. And she'll be like, forget it, And what I've learnt to do, when I was younger and, didn't have this grey hair, I'd get frustrated and irritated by that. Oh, come on, let's go, I've got to do this. But now what I've learnt is if I just leave it sit with her, a couple of days later she'll ask me about it. So tell me about that. Tell me about that again. And I'll go through it again, and then she'll say, okay, all right, well, let me think about it. And then maybe over the course of a week, she'll move from stone cold over my dead body to, all right, ring them up and make an offer, So and I've just learnt that about our own rhythms in terms of the decision making and where our mindsets are and how we operate,
Mate, it's a very similar type of
is that right?
Yeah, very similar type of style.
Yeah. Interesting.
Which and I think maybe this happens behind closed doors for a lot of couples that invest.
Sure,
and so to open it up goes, oh, that's similar to us. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm not alone, because I thought I was the only one, handbrakes or like maybe, speed of decisions. I think that's where we got, that's what wins deals. It's speed and decision making and conviction.
Yeah.
Whereas a yin and yang energy is, I want to be measured. Let me do my numbers. Let me think this through.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be just sold something. I've got to sign on the dotted line straight away.
Exactly.
I actually want to be not taken advantage of. And I think, if you call it risk adverse, if you call it prudent, if you call it, taking your time, for example,
Exactly.
there's some really good ways to then shift your perspective with your partner to go, they're not trying to kill the deal. They're really just trying to do their own checks and balances mentally
100%.
to make a really good, clear
100%.
decision.
Yeah, that's right. And it's such an important part of it, if you're going to have that solid foundation, and look, at the end of the day, your relationship is more important than any deal.
Here we go. Correct.
And I think, because what are you building this for anyway, right?
Yeah.
What are you building this for anyway? If you're doing it in a way that weakens your relationship or drives a wedge between you, well, is anything really worth that? And I would say no. Because at the end of the day, what's it all for?
That's right.
I think life is about people and it's about relationships. And I think some of the biggest successes that we see in life have come from the strength of relationships. Like I think of the band Bon Jovi, right? And I think one of my favourite bands, Ruth. I proposed to Ruth at Bon Jovi.
Oh, there we go.
And so we just love Bon Jovi, right? I think one of the greatest achievements of Bon Jovi is, yes, that amazing music, that incredible musicians, great songwriting, but they've held together as a band as well, mostly, right? Yeah. For generations, okay? And it's the strength of those relationships that has allowed them to be the superstars and the rock stars that they are, And I think you need to look at your relationship as a couple in the same way, If that relationship isn't strong, then it's not going to yield anything of great value. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So
it's like that whole consistency
it's that
versus
foundation
intensity, right? Like
from
you
which
just can't
everything
go
else
hard
flows.
and then collateral damages your relationship. Actually, what we're trying to do is we're trying to invest for the long term.
100%.
Maybe and I think this is where I want to get to my next question, which, as a couple, there's seasons in life.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's double income, no kids. And that's a time that generally I think people don't go hard enough.
Yes.
Because this is double income, no kids. You don't have the responsibilities. You can dial down your lifestyle, for example, not to eat 2-minute noodles, but just to go, we can make some moves.
Yeah.
We can make some moves here.
Yes.
Then you come into a stage where it's income, and then you come into a family planning stage.
Yeah.
Come out of, we're losing one income for a certain time period. I speak for ourselves. You have one child, you think about the second. So you go through a bit of a desert at the time, childcare, or someone stays at home. So, there's that responsibility. Yeah. And that's where I see a lot of couples almost trying to push a little bit too hard because they're trying to make up for lost time.
Sure.
I'm like, this is not the time to make these deep decisions. You want to be around for your kids and your family, not putting extra pressure that one has to go back to work in 6 months when we wanted to have 12 months mat leave, for example. Because as I've said before, a child can take off maybe $60,000 off your borrowing capacity. So these are decisions that we want to be making in advance, because if you want to be buying your own home, for example, as opposed to a rent investing model, to go for the second child or maybe third and then think about buying, that's a very different proposition to be double income, no kids, and trying to maybe stretch to buy your own home or rent fest as well. So take me through as you reflect on that time. I mean, you said your boys are in their 20s now, so that's a different season of life.
Different. Yeah.
And then we come to this phase of schooling, and some people elect for private schooling, which then that takes a sizable contribution there as well. And then when the kids come out of school, they're like, right, now's our time to invest, but they've lost nearly 20 years in and out of the market, and we know time out of the market is probably the most detrimental part for an investor. So my question to you here is, how do people adjust to the seasons of their life around investing?
It's a really good question, Aaron, really good question. And I think when you talk it through like you did just then, right, it makes perfect sense to, okay, we'll plan our single income, no kids. We'll plan the arrival of our first child. We'll plan the private school. We'll move through those phases and we'll have a strategy and approach for each one. We didn't do that.
Most people do not. When I ask them, they're like, I don't know there's no strategy here.
Look, we hit it hard in our 20s, but then those relationships ended and those properties went away, right? And, those marriages ended, those relationships didn't. Those people are still very important parts of our extended family, which was something we're really proud of, right? But so essentially we're starting again with children because we raised 5 children, his, hers and ours, So But, all 5 are under our roof, for a good part of the week and still are, So we didn't plan it that way. We knew we had an end goal. We wanted financial independence. And it was just like, okay, we're in this, we're doing it. And we kind of made it up as we went along and just did as best we could, But I think having, forums such as this and the information that is available now, if someone had said to me, look, Barney, plan this out, there's going to be phases, there's going to be seasons of your life, I think it would have taken a lot of angst and stress out of my journey, because we just were head down, raising kids, trying to buy property, working full-time, running part-time businesses, and we were just in there, boots and all, and we're just sort of in there at the coalface, just doing it. And we were probably a bit more responsive rather than proactive with how we plan things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But one thing you've said there is, you're grateful there's mediums like this. It's a double-edged sword. I'll tell you what, I had a call with someone today, significant incomes. We're talking $500,000 household income plus.
Wow.
4 kids, and they're saying, and they've got 3 properties at the moment. We're looking to scale that up. We can probably double their portfolio.
Sure. Yeah.
But they're going, how do people get to these 10? Because I've just seen someone on social media. She's younger than us, and she's saying that she's going to pull the trigger on their 9th or 10th. And I think what happens is these type of mediums, you get the highlight reel, where you get the clickbaity headline, the funnel that pulls you in for an intro call, and you drop, I don't know however much bucks it is. But you don't actually get, and she's like, how do they do it? I said, mate, I see behind the veil, so I get to see what's going on. They may have quantity, but are they quality? They may be lower priced, for example. Yeah. They may have the banker mum and dad.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they may be on super high incomes because they're selling, right? And they've got adjustable incomes. So to take the social media, to take the YouTube, well, there's so much property information out there, and everyone's got their angle. It's almost like you had ignorance was bliss back in your time, right? Because
there was no internet.
There was no internet. I'm just about to ask you, how did you build your team? Because there wasn't like great brokers then, or I don't know if you had a broker.
No.
There wasn't buyer's agents. No. So
yeah,
it's almost like there's obviously information overload at the moment.
Yeah.
But you had a lack of resources. What were you doing? Like property magazines?
Yes.
What were you doing?
Yeah, the Property Investor magazine and books. Yeah, and that was about it. Yeah, that's all it was. And even if I was...
So how are you researching deals back in the day?
Oh, well, it was hard. I didn't have anywhere like the resources we have now for tracking capital growth, or
look at the bloody hashtag.
It was hard.
Exactly. Look at the people hashtag, jump on and go, that is
no
way
DSR
too much.
Data, no DSR data, and I love all of that. It's fantastic. It makes your job a lot easier,
Yeah.
And it was things like you would, in part of my education process, I'd go to conferences and do any real estate course that was out there, and people would talk about, just watch where Woolies are going, you know what I mean? So if Woolies and Coles going in somewhere, well, then something's happening with that area. Because no, we didn't. You can't just Google ABS population forecasts for, wherever. So it was hard. And I remember I was wanting to invest out of my backyard, but how do you do that? There was no realestate.com. I used to have real estate agents in other towns send me the real estate section of their newspapers or their listings in hard copy, so they'd post. It was hard. So once the internet's come along, education has become a lot easier, and just research has become a lot easier. And, you can buy outside your own backyard a lot more easily, So, but coming back to the seasons, I think... you need that point where you just get a start. And I think the family home is critical for that. That can become the cornerstone and the foundation of what comes after, in terms of building that equity to be able to refinance. Like I say, we've built our portfolio off a $40,000 cash deposit. That's the only cash deposit we've ever had. It's all been cash outs since that, right? And we're just getting to the point now where we probably have enough cash somewhere. If we wanted to pay a cash deposit for something, we could, right? But that's the first time since that 40,000, right? Yeah. So you can do it. You don't need a lot of money. You just need to use what you get. And you're talking about the couple with the $500,000 income. I get frustrated when I see, because you see the young people starting out, and you say, or I think if you do this, 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 and this, you'll have a great journey. You'll set yourself up, right? But then you see people who haven't done that, and they'll be maybe mid-40s, early 50s,
Yeah.
and they think, oh, it's too late for me. Well,
Yes.
well, it's not. You're probably sitting on $2 million or $1 million equity that you haven't
Plus
tapped.
borrowing capacity because your incomes are peaking.
Exactly.
In their 40s.
You're at the height of your career and your
Correct.
earning potential, so hook in. You can achieve a lot in 10 to 15 years, So in terms of those seasons, I think for the people starting out, just get your team around you early. Like you say, while you're double income, no kids, get yourself go hard, 100%. And then be planning for when the kids come along. And do that well. You only get that time once, and it goes in the blink of an eye.
This is the other part. I think we probably sat out of the market a little bit when we had our very small kids, right? And it was, hey man, we don't want the financial pressure at this point. We want to enjoy this time. Now the business was probably our investment and our asset that we were investing heavily into.
Sure.
But then after a while, the pendulum swung, and we go, right, now we can have properties that are compounding, they're doing their heavy lifting while we go do our heavy lifting at work. And I've spoken a lot about, say, property equity versus sweat equity in a business.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
100%.
And we were talking earlier, and we'll come back to this as a question, but we're saying, but if it was this easy, everyone will be doing it.
That's right.
Yeah. Like
That's
you
right.
look at, you run a business, and and you're saying before, like, that there's a comment, and I'd love for you to share it, which is, how it's not an easy, and it shouldn't be easy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And did you want me to share the story?
Go for
first?
it,
About it not being. Yeah, I was. This is a time when I was working full time as a music teacher, and Ruth and I had ran a series of music schools and performing arts schools, sort of in the evenings, which sort of helped us get a little bit ahead as well. And there was a fellow who owned the music stores down, Warilla and Phil in Wollongong, and we used to buy a lot of instruments and music books and that sort of thing from him. And I used to see him fairly often. I was there, the end of the year or start of a year, and I was just fried, worn out, exhausted. And he said, "Barney, what's going on, mate?" He said, we had 3 academies and about 34 part-time staff and about 1,000 students across the 3, and it was busy, And he said, "Mate, you're not your normal positive, upbeat self. What's going on?" I said, "Phil, I'm just fried, mate. I'm cooked. I'm done." He said, "Oh, mate," he said, "it's got to be a little bit hard." He said, "It's not a little bit hard. Everyone would be doing it." No, it's true. And that stayed with me. It stuck. So, and it's like anything, isn't it? The things that are of true value in life are not easily won. It takes work. It takes sweat. It takes planning. It takes patience. And it takes a bit of risk sometimes, and it takes backing yourself, But that's where the sweet stuff is, And it's just having the courage to engage and take those steps and begin, just to begin.
Yeah. Yeah, start somewhere, mate.
It's like I say to people, and sometimes people say, "Oh, it's all right if you've only started in your 20s, And I go, well, you've still got 40 years of life left, like you can do a lot in a decade. You can do a lot in 5 years.
5 years, mate, correct.
And so, you say, well, look, buying, something I say to people is buying real estate is similar to planting a tree. They say, when is the best time to plant a tree? You go, well, 20 years ago or right now.
Mate, correct.
Get on it. Same when's the best time to start a property? Probably 20 years ago or right now. Just get into it. Start.
And what happens? People hear that like, "Mate," I was like, "Yeah, of course mate. I was in school 20 years ago. I couldn't have bought property then, but what I know now is what I know now." And then it's at a point now where you got to get the wheels in motion, start to act on it.
And people think sometimes, look, I need a lot of money. I need a lot of money to do this. You don't.
Mate,
I've got
this is. You got to understand. This is the best time. You always think right now is the best time. As we speak today, APRA has come out with debt-to-income ratios. I saw that last time when it was interest-only lending crackdown, whenever that was, 2014, I think. Then we saw it out of the Royal Commission, for example, and we've come in these cycles and waves. I'm like, living expenses weren't a thing. Like, you think about when you bought your properties, living expenses wasn't even, not even knew the word.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so cost of living wasn't talked about.
It wasn't. And as we move forward in the next 3 or 5 years, tech will then be able to data scrape your bank statements, for example. They'll actually see a true cost of living. They'll be able to work out what that looks like. So it'll just get harder then. So right here, right now is the best time to borrow, because as we go on in time, lending standards will only get tougher. As much as banks want to lend and earn money, they're always going to be prudent.
Yes.
So, mate, I go back 5 years ago. They didn't care if you had credit cards. They never factored that in. They didn't care if you had HEX 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Today, all that matters.
Yes.
Private health insurance matters today.
Yes. Yes.
Private schools matter.
Yes.
So you start to look at it going, oh, I'll just wait. I'm like, yeah, you wait. I'm sorry, but waiting will be to your own detriment.
It will. It will. And, you know, I have clients will come to me and say, look, you know, I've got a $1 million budget, I've got a $2 million budget, or I've got a $400,000 budget. We can work with everyone and we can get them on something good, you know, that's going to make them money and give them good cash flow.
Yeah, I love it.
There's always an opportunity. Whatever your budget is, there's an opportunity. And you need to be careful of these generalizations that don't apply to every situation. So if you've ever got, you know, just did a deal for a great young couple, their first investment property, $367,500, a one-bedroom unit in Brunswick, Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
7% gross return.
Jeez, not bad.
Not bad, right? And that's all they could afford. And they're not going to be worse off having done it in 10 years from now. That's going to have been a great decision for them. But they did that with less than $400,000. And they'll be able to do another one in 12, 18 months, you know. So you don't have to go big to make a dent and to get traction and to be moving forward. You just need to begin. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can almost feel what people are thinking when, particularly if they see you as well on, say, YouTube, right? They're like, hey, boomer, easy for you, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And I think your generation, they go, mate, your generation, easy to get into the market. And you know, the counter argument that you guys have is, mate, it was 17% interest rates. I didn't have the internet. Yeah. How do you handle that type of rhetoric to go, hey, Barney, easy for you back in the day where properties weren't this expensive, cost of living wasn't out of control, foreign income, you know, foreign investors weren't buying into the market, for example. There's so many, and I want to hear it, and I want to meet people halfway with that sentiment, but then you probably say, oh, there's a bit of excuses in there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I totally get it. And for people who might say, you know, younger generations who might say, oh, yeah, boomer, you had it easy. I go, to a certain extent, I go, fair call. The reality is, I think it was easier when Ruth and I were starting to build our portfolio. I think in many respects it was easier than it is now. What we didn't have was the information, the knowledge and the support networks. We didn't have that, right? But, you know, wages to median house prices, that ratio is, and, you know, I think the first house I bought was $150,000 and the household income was $60,000, right, at that time. What myself and my ex-wife were earning at that time. And that ratio has just blown right out to 5, 6, 7 times. You know,
so, some pages 13 times. Yeah.
So that's a lot harder. Okay, so I think there is truth in it. And as you know, when we were chatting off camera earlier, I have a real soft spot for people starting out because it is hard. It's hard. I believe it's harder now, and you know, I want to give them encouragement and give them hope and give them heart to say it can still be done. It can still be done. You can still do it. You can still achieve financial independence through real estate investing if you're prepared to educate yourself, build your team, and take the journey, right? It can happen, right? But I think the only little proviso I would put there is say, yes, it is harder now, but don't let that be an excuse to stop you from having a crack and having a go. And if you're feeling at a loss to go, well, but I just don't have the deposit, I don't have this, I don't have that, I'd say, look, seek out some mentors, seek out a team, talk to a good mortgage broker, talk to a good financial planner, and just find out where the goalposts are and then start building towards that. Is the advice I would give.
Look, it's I think that's where I want to for people to feel seen and heard, which is to acknowledge it was it was probably easier. It absolutely was easier because I look back even when I started broking 10 years ago, and the way the lending standards were so lax then, right? They took 100% of the rental income, no expenses attached to that investment property, whereas it's shaved to 80% of the rental income. and they'll add in rental property expenses and then amortize the loan differently as well. So I think there's been massive changes that I've seen personally just in this short time period.
Yeah. I think it needs to be acknowledged, you know, because I think it's disempowering for people. Because I think if you say to the new generation coming through, oh, no, it was hard for us too. Look, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It was hard, right? But I think it's harder now. But I think if you diminish that for people who are starting now and say, oh, look, it's not as hard. You know, we did it. You can do it. I think that's a lie, and I don't think it's helpful. You know, I think you need to acknowledge the truth and say, yeah, you know what, it is. It's harder, but it's not impossible. You know, it's not impossible, and just begin, because unless you take that first step, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get there, and I really think, as we were talking earlier, we are at a tipping point, I think, in Australia with property. Okay, so I helped some young people buy an investment property about 18 months ago. Mackay, 550,000, 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, right? And they were a German couple who had moved to Australia from Germany. And you know, Germany being an older country, their economy is a lot older, their real estate market is a lot older. Yeah. They just could not believe they'd managed to buy a home. They didn't live in it. It was an investment property, rent investors, lived in Perth, bought in Mackay, Queensland. They said, we never thought we would own real estate because back home, you don't.
Yeah,
you just
a lot of European countries,
you rent for life.
Yeah.
You rent for life, right? Yeah. I can see our Australian economy heading in that direction and our Australian real estate market heading in that direction.
Yeah.
But there is still a window and a period of time where people can write their own script, write their own journey, and be on the haves side of the equation rather than the haves not side of the equation.
But
and I just want to encourage them to get in now, because I don't know how long that window's open for.
Correct.
You know,
I'm saying to everyone, and I've got no agenda here when I say this, right? But we're literally living in the middle of this, where it's becoming the great divide of haves and have-nots. The government first home owner grant, the 5% no LMI scheme that came out in October, has literally changed the market. You could overnight it changed the market. You can see then the banker mum and dad is open for business, and I see it firsthand. The parents that are able to get their kids in the market and buy them into blue chip areas, or they're not going to stepping stone units like one bedders. They're buying townhouses, they're buying freestanding homes. They could never afford that if not for the great gratitude from their parents, the gift. So then it's like it's on the parents to then help. So then it's not a level playing field for this younger generation buying those homes. But then you think where you are with your kids that are in their 20s, the next generation under them is my kids who are 7 and 5 and will be property backed to help them get in. So I think about that future generation as well. And so if we've got our cohort of parents who are renting or not able to afford to get in and build a portfolio, it's the kids that are then going to suffer,
100%.
right? And again, there's a sentiment going, we should be capped. And I saw it on one of the politicians were talking about how investors are pushing the market out of control. Man, I'm just trying to improve my lifestyle. I'm not making these rules. Trying to become self-funded, trying to leave my kids something as well, trying to have a better life. And they're saying, no, we've got to cap the number of investment properties. We've got to stop investors from buying, got to roll out negative gearing, got to roll back CGT. Mate, the horse is bolted. The government cannot do anything aside from pour fuel into the fire and go, right, the only thing that's going up is house prices. They cannot stop this.
No. We need investors to house our people. If you take investors out of the market, that tenant who is displaced is not necessarily going to be able to afford to buy that house or any other house. So you're not helping the housing crisis by,
trying to slow down the market for people to. The train can't slow down for people to get on it.
You can't.
Unfortunately, as hard as that is for maybe some people to hear.
That's right.
There's too much riding on the Australian property market. Think about governments and stamp duty. Think about tax, capital gain tax, land tax, for example. Everything that comes off the back of it. How many industries are propped off of property? There's finance industry, there's buyer's agents, there's the real estate agent, there's conveyancing. mate, this country is built off property. Whereas you look at other countries like the States, and that's a very good share trading, buy your stocks over there. That's their, ETFs, that's their poison of choice over there, right? It's very much built around the commerce in that country. This is built around property.
Yeah.
Even being self-employed, as the business goes up, rather than move that profit into a company and then buy through that, that becomes tax effective. And so I think the hard part for people that aren't on board with it or trying to resist it, it's the whole saying, what you resist will persist.
Exactly.
You keep trying to resist, trying to buy them into the market. This thing's just going to keep eluding you.
That's right. It is what it is. Okay. And I suppose to the different types of person out there, like you mentioned, the family who might have money, the mums and dad, the banker mum and dad, right? I would encourage those people, help your children. Help your children get into property, because you don't want them to be on the wrong side of that great divide, okay? You talk about seasons. Ruth and I are at that time in our journey where we're starting to think about that transgenerational wealth, okay? So we're fine, okay, that's great, but I'm not going to hang up my boots and say, well, I'm done, finished, I'm okay. What drives me now is being able to help my children get established in a responsible way that is sustainable. There's a saying, I grew up in a farming community, right? And there's a saying in the farming community, the first generation clears the land, second generation clears the debt, third generation clears the assets, right? So we're educating our children about real estate investment and finance and money and strategies, so that when when mum and dad go to heaven, they don't just blow this portfolio, right? You're building that, right? So I think that bank of mum and dad is really important, right? To help your line be on the right side of the divide. But then for that person who doesn't have the bank of mum and dad, I just want to encourage them and say, you can do this.
You absolutely can do it. You absolutely can do it.
And we did it without any handouts, just with a $40,000 deposit, using equity and cash flow from our properties over time. And look, there were times, what you don't hear about is between 2008 and 2014, we didn't buy a single property because our kids were in private school, the market wasn't right. We were just locked up. We couldn't afford it. We weren't bankable, right? That was it. We weren't bankable.
It's a very good time to be out of the market, though. Didn't really do much over that period.
And then 2014, 2018, we didn't do anything. Okay, we were locked up again. But so there are those seasons, but it's just, it definitely still can be done. So I just really want to encourage those people who have aspiration but might be thinking, I can't do it. Reach out to someone who's walked that path. Read a book, listen to a podcast, read a biography, and just start your journey.
Correct. You said, 2008, something that first thing comes to mind is the GFC. Yeah, right? And then you talked about 2014, 15, I think we had the interest-only crackdown, then we had the Royal Commission, then we had the pandemic, for example. I've kind of seen this play out in my lifetime, what you call these black swan events, and everyone's now talking about, the 13.8-year property cycle, which then lands in 27, 28. Now, I'll just wait till then for that black swan event. Take me through, how have you handled going through those turbulent times? And then the next question to that is, why waiting for a black swan event could be dangerous?
I think one of the things that stays with me, one of the sayings is with real estate, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. Okay, so and there's a strategy for every point in the market cycle. Okay, and this is something I learned from farming communities as well. My brother is an agribusiness banker, and he says good farmers make money in any season, in any in boom times when there's plenty of rain and markets are good, they make money. In bust times where there's years of drought and the market's bad, they make money, right? Because they know the strategy for the cycle, right? And it's the same with real estate. So I think if you're waiting for the black swan events, I think you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You need to just start your journey and let time do that work for you, because history shows us that well-located property, good quality buildings in good locations tend to double about every 10 years through what we call the rule of 7, 7% capital growth compounding per annum will about double the value of that asset, which is pretty much what Australian property has done over the long term. And in recent years, a lot of places have done a lot better than that. And the forecasts you were showing me earlier this morning, over the next few years are going to do much better than that again, right? But even at that 7%, you're still going to, a very average performing asset can double in value, So you don't wait around. It's like the plant the trees. It's just get in and start your journey and let time do that work for you. Let the economy play out and let that capital growth that comes and the rental growth. See, that's another part that people forget about with the portfolio. Like you might be cash negative for the first 5 years or so, but as rents come up and as you pay down a little bit of debt, you'll gradually get to the point where you're cash neutral or cash positive, and then you can go again. The other thing people forget is we've only ever done interest-only loans. We've only just this last cycle, we always would finance 5 years interest only. You get in that 5 years, you'd shop it around, go another 5 years interest only. And then for what we're just starting to do now at this season, I suppose, is we thought, look, let's just go principal and interest now. We're not shopping it around, we'll start paying down the debt, okay? But when you're in that interest only phase, what people forget is time does the work of reducing the real dollar value of that debt. Even though you might have taken out a $600,000 loan to purchase that property, in 10 years' time, the value of that $600,000 debt is far less. You might not have paid $1 off that debt, but in real terms, it's worth half what it was when you took it out. And that, coupled with the capital growth of the asset, is where you really start to make some serious wealth. So, it's just a matter of getting in, riding the cycle, and allowing that time to do the work for you. Something else we say is, real estate for us is not get rich quick. It's get rich slow. But slow could be 15 years. Like I was reflecting with Ruth this morning before I came over here, and the portfolio we have now probably dates from 2008, okay? Right, so we had traded a few properties beforehand, and we'd had 3 consecutive good wins where we traded out of owner-occupier homes where we sort of made $250,000 a pop within about a 7-year period. So we made about $750,000 in a pretty short space of time, right, in equity, okay? It's just a matter of getting in and finding those opportunities and bringing that about.
It's funny when you reflect. I mean, what's that? 2008, you said, to now, so just under 17 years in the game. It's like running a business for 17 years, and at the start, it's slow going. Is this ever going to work? And people drop off at that point. They'll drop off. It's not working for me. I'll go into Bitcoin. I'll go into shares. Health, kicks in, or something happens, for example. And I think it's just who can stay in this game the longest will win.
Will win, exactly.
And it takes people, the amount of people that then go, man, we've got people that are going to Dubai at the moment and trying to buy property over there. I'm like, you're crazy. What are you doing? Cashing out, go and buy crypto, go and buy shares, go and buy ETFs. And they call it diversification, but it's almost shiny object. That's where I almost go, hey, is diversification shiny object syndrome? Or is it actually a method to your madness when it comes to investing?
We are 100% real estate. One of the first books I read when I was 24 was Jan Summers, an Australian investor.
Mate, there you go.
How to Build Wealth Through Residential Property. I read all the books. I think there was 3. The first one, How to Build Wealth Through Residential Property, How to Build More Wealth Through Investment Property, and How to Build Wealth in Changing Times. And so Jan Summers was pivotal for me in terms of my education and being able to see it, right? And I remember distinctly...
Did you have that software that came on the CD? Did you?
No, but...
I think when I first started broking, I got it, ordered it.
No, I never had it, but a real estate agent who I'd bought property through had it.
Yeah.
And I said, find out. So I'd be looking at a property and I'd say, what's the internal rate of return on this one? Because Jan was all about internal rate of return and that sort of thing. And she was pivotal for me. That was a real formative moment for me, her books. And I've never met her or anything.
No, I've tried to get her on. She's mate. I don't do this stuff anymore.
But I loved her story, and Jan made it real for me. Like I didn't know Jan, but I believed her story and I believed her numbers. It just made sense. Numbers don't lie, right? Numbers don't lie. And I could see that. But one of her pieces of wisdom, and it speaks to the shiny object thing that you talk about, she said, people say, oh, why don't you diversify in shares? Why don't you diversify in this? And she said, look, we are, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And she said, we have always put all our eggs in the one basket and we just watch that basket. And Ruth and I have been the same. And whenever I've bought Bitcoin and we've lost money on Bitcoin, right?
There's actually a really good article
right?
in the AFR. There's like AFR did a really good article on potentially Bitcoin becoming one of the biggest honey traps. It's like, find me an asset that's not income producing, that has no physical value attached to it, and that you can't leverage against, that does that, but it has the volatility as well. I was like, yeah, man, that's pretty much articulating what I've been trying to say. I got to pull it out as a sentence. And when I speak to young people, they're like, oh man, I don't want to invest in property. It's a little bit volatile. And I'm like, what else have you got here? Like, I got some Bitcoin. I was like, oh my goodness. Do you hear this volatility?
Yeah, that's right. And people say, well, do you have any shares? No, don't have any shares. We've got property.
I'm with you, man. I don't buy, I've said this before in the podcast. I don't buy shares.
Yeah.
I'd invest in myself.
Yeah. Yes.
I invest in
100%.
Myself as a business.
100%.
The only shares I ever bought was when I was at CBA and I got discounted shares, and goodness me, they've done pretty well, right? But that's because I was employed by the business and the organisation I bought shares.
Sure.
But I say to anyone, why buy shares on something you can't, on a business you can't control?
Exactly.
Put that into your own personal development. Go get a career qualification, personal development. I don't know, do a Tony Robbins, do something that then ignites your ability to earn more, and that's your cash flow to go into compounding assets like property. Leverage, go again.
I couldn't agree with you more. And people say to me, but Barney, why haven't you ever bought shares? I said, well, the reason is I can't leverage against shares. If I've got 100 grand, right, which I've never had 100 grand to go shopping with, that 40 grand, but if I had 100 grand, right, if I go buy 100, I'm not leveraging my 100 grand and buying $1 million worth of shares, right? Because the risk is too great, right? That could all be gone tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll buy 100 grand, pay cash for that 100 grand worth of shares. And look, even if that goes really well and I'm making 11% a year, right? I've made 11 grand, right? Okay. So I can look forward to making 11 grand a year. But if I take that 100 grand and I leverage into, look, let's just say a $500,000 property, right? We're not going to pay lender's mortgage insurance. Let's just get a $500,000 property. And that's growing at 7% a year, right? That's straight away, that's 35 grand a year. I'm off other people's money, off that same 100 grand, and I'm way ahead. Even if I've got to prop it up a little bit with, I might be negatively geared by, say, 12 grand. The taxman will probably pay a third of that, right? So it might be costing me, let's say, 9 grand out of my own pocket. I'm still a lot further ahead than that 11 grand I would have made off my 100 grand shares. And then as we leverage that over time, when people are starting out, look, once you get a base of, say, 2 or 3 million, say growing at 7% per annum, 7% of 3 million is 210 grand. You're never going to have an equity problem again.
Correct.
Right? And you can just keep rolling and buying another property every year or so, and that's where the true wealth comes.
I agree. I agree. Life gets easier when you can scale out a little bit more as well.
That's right.
The portfolio becomes a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah.
There's options available to you. Yeah. It's almost like having 6 properties is easier than having one.
100%.
Right? It is. As mind-blowing as that might be for some people listening, when you get there, you're like, oh, this makes sense.
That's right.
Because now I've got leverage, rental income, serviceability, no problems, choice of lenders, cash flow. But it takes going through a little bit of pain, a little bit of planning as well.
That's right.
Building the team out, everything that we're big advocates for here to tell you well. So for us, you're not here to farm or fish for business.
No.
I said that from the very start, mate. Obviously you are running a BA business, so if anyone wants to research you, but what you're bringing to the table is years of experience saying, I've been on the journey, but I've crossed over to the other side where I've now built out passive income through property. And that's the story that I wanted to champion today, Barney, which I think you've done exceptionally well.
Thanks,
I'd love to get Ruth on.
To
get Ruth on and get.
I would love for her to come on and tell
Yeah.
her side of the story.
Absolutely.
She would jump at it.
Yeah, let's do it.
She would jump at it. Yeah.
Let's do it. We'll include details. So if people want to find out more about what you guys are doing, who would be the ideal investor that you're working with at the moment?
Look, I'll work with anyone who wants to grow a portfolio, whether they're starting out, whether they're an experienced investor who just doesn't have time. Look, even a first home buyer, because I like working with first home buyers, because that first home, if you get that right, that can be the cornerstone of a portfolio, you know. And I've got a real soft spot for first home buyers and beginners. You know, I just want to help them, you know. Like you mentioned, I was in education for 30 years. You don't serve a community for 30 years and then that just goes away, you know. Like that's still part of my DNA. I'm a bit of a mixed bag. I'm a capitalist, but I'm also a humanitarian, you know. So,
and I think one thing that stands out is you guys are creatives. Like I get a lot of people in the music industry because it doesn't typically pay well, right? The arts, music, anything creative doesn't typically pay well.
Right. No.
Whereas you get the strong incomes out of your professional services, right?
Yeah.
So for you to do what you did coming out of creative side to then, I think that's the power in the story actually that we really didn't double down on, which is music teachers or someone in the arts or that space. You
last person you expect to be financially independent off the back of a real estate portfolio. You don't expect that of a musician. Correct. You know, you think of the starving artist, the struggling musician. You know, and you know, look, I love the arts. We love music, and that's still a big part of our lives. You know, but we just knew that wasn't going to be a vehicle to financial freedom for us. And as soon as, you know, in my early 20s, when I first heard the term financial freedom, because I don't come from money, my parents are, you know, beautiful people, but risk-averse. They are of the generation debt is bad, not
you
good
pay your
debt,
own
bad
quickly
debt,
as possible,
and then you just write it out. You know, so there was none of that in my story. You know, so. It's you don't think of a musician being able to do that. So I sort of said, look, if Ruth and I can do it as two musicians, right, with 5 kids and in private schools at different times, then literally anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Barney. I appreciate it. We'll include details to the socials.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's I've loved being here, and thank you so much. I'm humbled that you'd like to speak with me, mate.
True gentleman, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Listeners, if you've loved it, hey mate, we'd love the comments. People have been reaching out off the back of comments directly through to us via the socials. Mate, keep them coming. We love it. I would have referenced there in the chat that we do have our Property Accelerator community that we meet the second Wednesday of every month, 7:30. It's a tight group of investors that are trying to play a bigger game, community around them that are championing going, I bought my next one, I'm on to the next one, I got pre-approved, I'm going to buy 5 next year. To that effect as well. And it doesn't have to be 5, it can be 1, and that's a massive win as well. So if you want to get around people that want to see you win, we bring in guest speakers, we go deep on portfolios, for example, as well. If that sounds like you, drop us a message and say Accelerator, and we'll get your details for the next one that kicks off as well. Hope you've enjoyed this chat. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks very much.